Check out this neat little hot rod that Roger, the customer we built that 51 Bel Air for last year, he picked this thing up and had a couple concerns. After he called me, I was like, oh great, what am I getting myself into here? So I decided to go to his house and look it over before I committed to taking on this job. Because I know that some of these rat rods can be pretty atrocious in the fabrication department. Over there and took a look at it and was like, well, this doesn't look too bad. It looks fairly well put together. His main concern was the brake master is underneath the floor, and at ride height, the hoist is holding it up right now, so I can't really show you, but the bottom of the brake master was about that far off the ground, and he was concerned about getting hung up on it. And I've already started tearing into the steering here, but when you would turn the steering wheel with this suicide steering through the cowl, the whole pitman arm, I guess you'd call it the pitman arm, the whole steering box would twist in there and deflect before it would move the tie rod. So clearly something wasn't braced up enough up inside the dash there with the steering box. In addition to that steering box deal in there, the drag link here that goes to the front, you see how far these heims are threaded out. And before I ripped it apart, it should be longer yet actually. It steers way sharper one way than the other. I've got a longer bar ordered because, as you can see here, we maybe have 3 threads of engagement if we're lucky, and that's on both ends. So that's another pretty scary situation there. And yeah, there's more yet. We'll pick her up in the air and show you what the underneath looks like. Well, from the underside here, we'll start at the front. Could probably use a bit more welding there. The old spring perch bolts, there's no nuts on them. It's just hanging there in the breeze. Just kind of scary. But the biggest thing is there's no weld here on this joint. There's no weld on the bottom of this joint. And they got a fish plate on there. If you look closely here, the frame is cracked all the way up to the top of the web. There you go. So that frame is cracked almost completely through all the way to the top. There ain't much holding her together anymore. Same goes for both sides. It's hard to see, but the back side of this gusset is split. I guess you can see that. So we're going to have to get that closed back up, and we're going to plate all the way around along the bottom of this here and close that up. Give that some strength, probably redo these fish plates. Same goes for this side. You can see that weld is cracked there at the bottom of that gusset. And on the outside of the frame here, it's tough to see, but it is split all the way almost to the top of the frame rail there. If that ain't scary, I don't know what is. Moving down the line here, there's our brake master cylinder. Like I said, it's maybe 2 inches off the ground tops, which I don't understand why they didn't move that up a little bit. I mean, the lines are here, but they could have shifted this over and got it tucked up in there. So we're going to reconfigure all this. Got a little poke and hope welding there. Looks like they had a different cross member in there at some point. And even the floor bracing, you see there's no welds on the bottom of anything. It's just like it was built from the top and that was it. Same back here, no weld on the bottom of there. There. The frame rail there, the cross member. And it's not welded here either, so that needs to be capped as well. This suspension joint looks like it's threaded out awfully far too, so we'll take that apart and check on that, make sure we're not on the ragged edge of pulling our threads out there. I just spotted this here while I was giving you guys the tour. If you can see that, but suspension bracket is completely broke free there. And that's some chicken shit weld for sure. Yeah, see all kinds of daylight between there. Not good. Well, I think that's the end of our atrocities for now. Besides for this Poor excuse for a battery cable. That must be about like a 6 or an 8 gauge. I think that's about it. So I'm sure there'll be more, but we'll get started on the list we do have. I'll give you a look inside here. Kind of got some neat bomber seats, a bunch of cool copper plating. Don't mind my mess of tools in there, because like I said, I've already started tearing into it. But potato sacks on the seat. It's all pretty cool. They had this copper sheet pop riveted over this recess in the dash here. And I had to drill these 3 screws out in order to get access, see what was going on in there. I could clearly see that they had never pulled the dash out of this thing when they built it. So in order to get that steering box out, I had to drill those screws out. I had to cut, they had a bearing on the column there. A couple wheelbarrow bearings with a lovely weld on there. But I had to cut that. I had to take a tin snips and snip here and here because there was no way to get the dash out without doing it. There wasn't much left of it anyways, it was pretty mutilated already. Anyway, with that dashboard out of the way now, I just got it tipped up out of the way so I don't have to unwire everything in the whole car. But I could not get that out of there without cutting this dash bar. You can see what they got going on here. They had 2 pieces of this square stock going across the dash. And these 3 bolts on the steering box bolted to this plate here. And if you look closely here, that isn't welded very much. And what is welded, that one in the back corner is completely broke free. The one up there, you can see how welded that is too. And the bottoms of these on the back side, there's no weld. Now I understand this thing's got super limited access. It's hard to get in there and work. But it took me maybe 2 minutes to drill those 3 screws out to get the dash out so you can get in here and work on the thing. And there's just no excuse for doing work like that. That could have easily killed somebody. And lucky it didn't already. Getting this chassis prepped here for our repair. I moved my hoist arms back here. I had them up here before. Now the engine is pulling the whole front of the frame down and closed that gap up. And I've got her ground out with the die grinder. I had to do a little surgery on the body here since it's welded to the frame. I can't take it off and get out of the way. So had to make myself a little bit of clearance. But now you can see that crack pretty well once I've got it ground out here. You can see that it goes all the way to the top of the frame. So the plan is weld this joint up. I'm going to weld across here. And I've made myself a 1/4-inch plate here, blew some holes in it with the plasma cutter. And that's going to span across that whole gap and be able to be plug welded in as well. After we get this all, I'll probably just get it tacked up. We'll jump in here and cut this old fish plate off and make something that covers a little more real estate there. And find out potentially if this weld is broken underneath there as well, because this is broke free. Well, I'm feeling a little better about that. Had to make some multiple passes in here to cover everything. But I think we got her shored up well enough on the outside. My plug weld's filled in. And I just knocked this gusset off of this side. And you can see right here we got more crackage going on. Some more not welded there underneath that plate. So we'll grind this all out and make it proper. Onto the passenger side here. Knocked that gusset off of there. I just cut on both sides of the weld and air chiseled it out. And yeah, that weld rolled right off of there, like no penetration in half of that one. Found us another gnarly crack here. After I ground everything smooth, I almost missed it. But that one is top to bottom too. So I got her cleaned out with the die grinder so we can get some penetration. I'm almost all the way through this tubing. So we should be able to get a pretty good penetrating weld there. Yeah, baby. We got our frame put back together here. Put some proper fish plates on there. Always round the corners on these so you don't create any stress risers. But both sides plated. I also got this in the back done. Plated those in, re-welded that mount there, and the rest of the missing welds here. And now we're moving on to the brakes. I've cut this pedal assembly out from underneath there because we're going with a whole different setup. I popped the door off this thing because it wouldn't open up. It would hit my hoist arms here. And I've got to jack this thing up to get the hoist arms under it, so it was getting to be a pain. Anyway, here's the plan for the brake setup. Got a Willwood Dual Master doohickey floor mount, pair of AFCO Masters on there. We decided to go this route so we could ditch this master cylinder that hangs, 2 inches off the ground, so he's not getting hung up on it. But I've already taken the liberty to blast a hole out there in the front of the firewall, and I'll slide this up in there and show you what that looks like. Here's what they look like from the outside. I got them shoved up far enough through that you can get at the master reservoirs there and fill her up. And I've got myself a little bit of space here and here to account for any frame flex so we don't break anything if we get a little chassis twist. And inside the car here, we're mounted up through this 1/8 inch plate floor. Get that mounted good and solid. I did have to patch this slit that was here for where the old brake pedal came up through. Of course, our fastener here landed right on top of that hole. But I got the brake pedal pretty much right where it was before. Any further this way and it'd be super uncomfortable to drive. So I think we're looking pretty good there. Now that we've got that mounted, I'm going to jump back to this steering situation just in case I have to pull this back out. I don't want to have that all plumbed and filled up just to have to take it back out again to get the steering box in there. So let's jump back to the steering. Well, she's definitely not the prettiest thing in the world, but we got her put back together. I was able to weld the back sides of all these tubes to that top plate there. The only way I was able to get in there was actually through our hole in the floor. So I had to reach up in there and try and attempt to see what I was doing. Got that welded up decent, and then I went ahead and added a piece of 3/16 by 3/4 around the whole perimeter here, just to give myself some more weld surface area to attach to these tubes versus just being welded at the top, and that'll keep that plate from flexing underneath the steering forces. And I added gusset here. There's one on that back up right there. I couldn't add one here because of the headlight switch comes through right here, but there's another one back there. Also added a bar here, and you can't see it, but there's another bar underneath here connecting the front and the back dash bars together. I may want a little overkill, but I really don't want to come back in here, so I think we're going to call this good. Put the dash back in. Well, we got our piece back together in here. Got all my pop rivets put back in, and instead of just welding this bar back to the column, if we ever need to get back in there, went outside and got me a 39 Studebaker connecting rod out of the parts hoard, bent her with the torch and drilled this through, and that's a bolt-on affair now. Well, we've got this rat bastard put back together. Got the brake system plumbed. There's a 2 psi residual valve to the front and a 10 psi for the back. Got a new drag link on. That's looking a whole lot better than the 3 threads of engagement we had before. Also got a new set of front tires here. The old ones had broken belts in them. Both of them did, so she didn't drive very good. And they were really funny. They really canted off, and that was because I checked the toe and there was like 1 inch of toe in it. So adjusted the tie rod. I got about an 1/8 inch of toe now. We'll try that out. I did get these bolts put in from Speedway. They're tapered on the top, and there's a tapered seat on the bottom. So that's pinched all back together the way it should be. Also got rid of this pathetic little 8-gauge starter cable. Got a proper fat 2-gauge wire on there now. So I think we're about ready for a test drive. She is toasty in there. I've been running up and down the road here making a series of panic stops in order to get this brake bias bar adjusted properly. I got it now. But when I started, it would lock the back tires, move it over, bias to the front, it would lock the front tires. So I got a happy medium here now where kind of everything bites in at the same time. So after a little test drive there, it came glaringly obvious this thing needs some shocks on the front. Every time you hit a little bump or crack in the road, that front tires would just bobble, and we need to arrest some of that movement. We got on the forums, and here's what we came up with. What guys are using on these straight axle front suspensions. This is a 1950 Plymouth shock. It's like the exact same thing Speedway sells. Same travel and everything for under half the price. They don't come with bushings installed, so I bought just a 3/8 pipe nipple at the hardware store and put it in the old lathe. Turned on the OD, drilled out the ID, and we got ourselves some shock bushings. So the plan is to stick these shocks right in here. We'll build a bracket off frame, some tabs off the old hairpin arms. And I've already cycled the suspension, lifted it up with the hoist, see where it droops out at. And I had a couple buddies over here. We were jumping up and down on the front end and measured to see what my clearance was. So I've got this shock wired up at mid-travel. That should work for exactly what we need. I'll jump over the computer and drop some brackets. Well, after figuring out all my side clearances and so nothing hits, here's what we came up with. Just some simple brackets that gets the top of the shock 4 inches over the top of the frame, and I'll be able to mount right to the side of that control arm, hairpin, whatever you want to call it. So we'll ship these over to Chad and probably have them plasma cut before the end of the day. Here's my neighbor. We got hot rods all over the place around here. I think this is going to be a wrap on this here rat rod. Brought her outside so you can actually see those shock brackets. She's a little dark and dingy in the shop. But I think those will work. We need to go on our final test drive yet. Thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully get something else cool in here in the near future to film. And when we do, we'll see you then.